Tribes were a huge addition in Shadow of War. I've yapped about each of them extensively in the past, but today I want to continue the thoughts I had in my Each Tribe's Culture video, specifically the importance of the Outlaw Tribe, because I have a lot of thoughts on them, and I love what I've put together. So, roll the intro, let's get into this! Hello Internet! Welcome to Orc Theory, one of the many shows on the internet that loves beating a dead horse. The Outlaw Tribe got the most screen time in my video on Orc Culture, and that wasn't for no reason. In fact, I could have continued, but at the risk of drawing that video out too far, I cut it short to give them a dedicated video. Now, for those who are new here or don't know much about the Shadow games, the Outlaw Tribe were introduced in the middle of Shadow of War's life as a DLC alongside the Slaughter Tribe. The Outlaw Tribe used cobbled together armor that is usually mismatched or ill-fitting, patched with wood and bones. This is in stark contrast to the other tribes that use normal metal and hide. The Ferals still like bones though, that's just kinda their thing. Outlaw fortresses are shambled together using rusty metal and depict their insignia, the Bloody Fist. The importance of this emblem becomes obvious when I mention what they fight for. The Outlaw Tribe believes that Mordor is for the orcs, not the self-declared lords of Mordor or their minions. These orcs believe they are superior to the weak orcs that fight for Sauron and the Bright Lord, and the legions of men that lurk on the edges of Mordor. The Outlaw Tribe dream of a Mordor where the orcs are free of external meddling, a surprisingly noble goal. This is something I'm sure many Tolkien purists would take issue with, so for clarification, I'm not saying that any of the topics covered in this video are explicitly in the books or movies. All ideas and concepts I'm going to cover will stick to the Shadow continuity. They only affect the continuity that the games exist in. Whether these types of things are possible within canon are another question for another day, and I will remind everyone there is a difference between canon and continuity, but I don't really want to get too far into that, so go look it up if you don't know what it is. So the Outlaw Tribe dislikes Sauron, Celebrimbor and Talion, the Nazgul, and the other orcs. That seems pretty simple, so why are they getting a dedicated video? Because there's implications for the greater story of Middle-earth and the types of stories that people with the right mind can tell in Middle-earth. In most Middle-earth adjacent stories, the orcs are mindless fools, soldiers that were born and bred to be cannon fodder, but even in the stories set in Middle-earth's past, we see orcs not always siding with Sauron. I'm first going to talk about Rings of Power, so skip it if you don't like that, but I think most people are going to like the conclusions I've come to, and I think it's a really cool one that uses the better stuff in Rings of Power. The stuff that's not, debatable in quality. The stuff that at least I think was really cool and not really too lore-breaking. In Rings of Power, we see Adar, one of Morgoth's first orcs, the Moriandor. He first appears in the scenes taking place soon after the defeat of Morgoth. Sauron had summoned what remained of Morgoth's army to Durnost, a fortress that Sauron had commanded while Morgoth ruled. Adar, along with many hosts of orcs, followed the call of the former Dark Lord's lieutenant to Durnost. Little did they know, Sauron possessed Morgoth's Dark Crown, and was hoping to be made the new Dark Lord. Unfortunately for Sauron, Adar had decided enough of his children, the orcs, had died for the stupidity of the Dark Lords, and now planned to give them a home for him to rule. He betrayed Sauron during the coronation, stabbing him with Morgoth's crown and believing him to be truly dead. This led to the plot of Rings of Power Season 1, where Adar takes his legion of loyal orcs to what would become Mordor to blow up the volcano that would come to be known as Mount Doom. Season 2 would continue with Adar's attempt to give the orcs a home as they would learn Sauron still lives, leading to Adar wanting to finish the job. This would all coalesce at the Siege of Eregion, where Sauron would convince the orcs to betray their Lord Father due to the deaths stacking up. Adar believed that the orcs deserved to be free of Dark Lords, and he, one of the first orcs, should lead them. Kinda sounds familiar, doesn't it? Adar's beliefs on the orcs sounds a lot like what the Outlaw Tribe believes, and that gives me ideas. While the continuity differences between the Shadow continuity and Rings of Power continuity are too different to be the same, the idea that a Moriondar like Adar, or that Adar himself at one point existed in the Shadow continuity, obviously isn't too far-fetched. Maybe the Outlaw Tribe is older than many orcs realize, and they were originally formed by Adar. Perhaps after Adar was killed by a host of his orcs, some still believed in what he preached, abandoning their brothers and becoming the Outlaws. Their insignia, the Bloody Fist, is mentioned by name in their appendices entry, which is different to all other tribes. Why include the name of their insignia? It makes me wonder if Monolith had plans for it to be more than just a way for players to recognize the Outlaw Tribe. Obviously, not assuming that Rings of Power was going to happen, because these are so far apart, but it makes me wonder if, in lore, it was in honor of their fallen Lord Father, Adar, one of the first orcs that gave them the dream of freedom, but was silenced too early by their new oppressor. The fist is a normal emblem for rebellion, but the way this one is damaged and held up by chains, and the metal ring almost makes it seem like the fist belongs to someone who can no longer hold it up themselves. Someone who's dead. Adar. There is little to no evidence to support this theory, but I really like it. It feels like something that really fits while not being intended. Adar was my favorite character in Rings of Power because I love the orcs, and this feels like a good way of tying together loose ends. It also made me really feel like MatPat putting that together, because that sounds like something he'd do for FNAF. The next part to cover is the time between the last alliance of men and elves and the start of Shadow of War. The Shadow games are notorious for being hard to place in the timeline, with events not quite lining up. You see, they have to take place after The Hobbit, because Gollum has lost the One Ring, so that gives us, at most, around 70 years to play with. That's not that long. There's other issues with Shadow of War's timeline, like why are there so many Uruk-hai in Mordor, and why are they following Sauron? Yeah, these aren't technically orcs, they are Uruk-hai, but I usually avoid that because it's confusing. Either way, a big question I have is where were Mordor's orcs between the last alliance and the beginning of the games? Because there's a massive gap of time where the orcs of Mordor just kind of vanished. Yes, there are goblins about, which are just cave orcs, and there's the larger, tougher Gundabad orcs from the Misty Mountains, but where were the southern orcs, the host of Mordor? I theorize that after Sauron's defeat, what would eventually become the Outlaw Tribe saw their chance and took it, waging a civil war against the other orcs. I even suspect this may be where many of the tribes as a whole would have been formed. Realistically, Mordor, and by extension Sauron, has no use for the orcs being divided into tribes if they all serve him. It feels like it feels like a problem. Like the orcs are going to be fighting each other. This is my train of thought. What better time to attempt a coup and seize power than when the actual Dark Lord has been banished? It's perfect timing for them. This would also be where many other tribes first pop up. The orcs that would avoid the war by fleeing east to Nirn would become the Feral Tribe. Orcs that remained loyal to Sauron would become the Dark and Mystic tribes. The orcs who jumped into combat for the thrill would become the Warmongers, and later form the Marauders. The Slaughter, Terror, and Machine could also have some roots here. Maybe the Tower creates the loyal Terror Tribe to fight in Sauron's name. The Machine Tribe turn to invention to fight, or maybe avoid the war altogether by digging into their minds like dwarves. The Slaughter could even have a similar origin here to what I've already theorized about before. This Orc Civil War could easily explain a lot of things about Mordor's denizens, like why the orcs never seem to wander beyond the Black Gate, where the division of tribes came from, and why the outlaws faltered in their attempt. I imagined when the Nazgul returned after Sauron reappeared as the Necromancer, that they were pretty easily shut down by this civil war. The outlaw tribes seem to hate the Nazgul as much as Sauron, and that seems like as good a reason as any. Either that, or when Sauron personally returned to Mordor, he saw to it himself. No matter how the Outlaws' civil war ended, they appear to have lost. More than that, it seems like it was a pretty crushing defeat. The Outlaws appear to be among the smaller tribes and have questionable sway against the others, but that doesn't mean they don't still exist. To me, they're biding their time. Mordor isn't going anywhere, and Sauron still hasn't managed to expand yet. I'm sure the Outlaws existed during the Lord of the Rings era, but likely would have sat out of the conflict. I mean, why get involved when the men only want Sauron and the Nazgul destroyed? They might as well let their two greatest enemies tire each other out, then swoop in and take Mordor. By Tolkien's wishy-washy account, the orcs simply disappeared after Sauron was defeated, but much like the Nazgul, I don't find it particularly compelling. The idea that they would just dissolve goes against so much extended lore, canon or not. No one really seems like they want the orcs to just vanish. They aren't an extension of Sauron's power, but living, breathing things with their own sapient minds. Tolkien himself also wrestled between whether the orcs are truly evil without the Dark Lords, making me believe that within a few generations, the orcs would leave memories of the Dark Days behind. Maybe I'm biased for that, but I really do hope that the orcs aren't just extinct within a few years. They seem to have a door open for them to move past it and become something more. All they have to do is see it, and I think the Outlaw Tribe might just be the ones to eventually do it. It's safe to assume most of the dark and mystic tribes are completely eradicated within a few years. The others would probably remain in some form, but their power might wane as the Outlaw Tribe takes Mordor. I see the warmongers, marauders, and ferals all leaving Mordor for the things they seek: battle, riches, and beasts. The Machine and Slaughter tribes likely somewhat remain. Many machines are integrated into the Outlaw Tribe, and the Slaughters, who I've already speculated to be nutjobs, wouldn't really have anywhere else to go, perhaps leading them into joining the Terror, or the more sane of them that are somewhat useful being integrated into Outlaw as well. Terror is interesting because I'm not certain what would become of them. They may integrate with the Outlaws, or maybe they leave like some of the others. I'd say they're among the more open book of them. So where does that leave us with the Outlaw Tribe? I think they could be very useful in Middle-earth stories simply because of how human it makes the orcs, for the lack of a better word. They make the orcs feel like living, breathing things with their own merits and flaws. And I hope we get to see more of these types of orcs at some point, because I feel they have so many possibilities. I'll probably include them heavily if I ever get around to making a what if there was a third Shadow game. To me, world building is among the most important parts of telling a story. Maybe I'm weird for this, but usually I won't like a story if its world or its universe are boring. I like explanation for things, and I want to hear how the writer thought about their universe on a technical level. Unfortunately, Tolkien didn't explain too much in great detail, and I feel like that's a shame because there's so much you can do with the ideas in Middle-earth. Admittedly, when Middle-earth was written, it was a different era. So much has changed since Lord of the Rings was first written that I can't fault him too much. But hey, that's just a theory. An orc theory! But you know what's not a theory? My varied gaming channel, Snapshot. Starting this month, I will be uploading at least once a month over there. The first video is a Sea of Thieves video about the mythical Shrouded Ghost, a Megalodon variant that most players have never seen. It's meant to be a humorous nature documentary, hence mockumentary, that features some pirate conspiracy theorists. Go check that out if it sounds interesting, because I had a ton of fun making it. Some other ideas I'm tossing around are related to FNAF, Fortnite, and more. But with that, if you play Fortnite and are grabbing your Star Wars Battle Pass or Darth Jar Jar, then consider using code WreckingBallBlue to support me. With that, we've come to the end of this video, so if you did enjoy, consider hitting the like button down below, because it tells me that you like the video, and if you like what I do and want more of it, consider subscribing for more, and don't forget to hit the bell either if you'd like notifications for whatever I upload. With that, I will see you all next time!